Um, the name Annie just came to me. Annie? It's strange because I want to go through the wall right here. It's bizarre. But then I keep seeing a baby dying. Was there a baby that died? A baby girl that died in this house?
There's speculation of a baby dying.
That's what I feel that's correct.
This is getting into a very controversial part of the history, the story of Sarah Treadwell's baby.
I just can't leave this area. I keep feeling there's a passageway. And one more name I have is Clark. That just came in. Clark. Ooh, I know I want to go upstairs. Top floor feels like I don't like the energy I'm feeling. And I'm not even there yet. And I hear a woman crying, honestly. I hear crying. She's crying. Oh boy, okay. I feel like she loses a child and she's crying about it.
I thought this part of the history was debunked.
I'm seeing blood everywhere.
Or is there another layer to the story we still have yet to uncover?
She's so sad. She's so sad because she wanted to keep her baby. She wanted her baby. There's something about that. Her spirit definitely still wanders the halls of this house. It's here.
All right, welcome to Factor Theory Live. I'm Steve Crawford. It is 6:04. It is January 5th, and that was a clip from pretty much my favorite show at the moment. At least I've been watching nothing but that in Devils Gulch for the last 2 months, I'm thinking. My guest tonight is a man who is literally following in the footsteps of the original ghost hunter, Hans Holzer. Mr. Dave Schrader, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing great, Stephen. Thanks for having me on.
First off, season 3, is it coming?
Nope.
Oh, no. No.
Well, we've been off the air now for 2 years with Holzer Files. They rolled Cindy Kaza and I over to Ghosts of Devils Perch.
Right.
Shane Pittman went over to Netflix and did 28 Days Haunted. And then Discovery purchased HBO and Warner Brothers. And aside from their tentpole shows like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Brothers, Ghost Adventures, and I think Dead Files, every other show is just kind of in limbo right now. There are Destination Fear, Kindred Spirits are going to be airing new episodes, but I don't know if they're out filming anything new. So that's where we're at this point. I would love to get a chance to revisit the Holzer Files in the future. And I would love to continue on with the Ghosts of Devil's Perch, but we're kind of at the mercy of the Discovery Warner Brothers merger and all that entails.
Kind of like how everybody's at the mercy of trying to figure out who's going to be the Speaker of the House down in the States right now.
Yeah.
Man.
This is probably less messy than that at this point. There's a lot of change that's gone on. So we wish Discovery well. They've been very kind to us, Discovery Networks and Travel Channel. So I'm just pleased to be a part of their family.
Oh man, I'm kind of in mourning right now. That's because, like I said, I've really been chain watching those shows for.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow. Okay, well, still, who was it? How did you get into that show to begin with? Because the whole premise was genius.
Now here's how I understand it. So I was the last person to do a full interview with Dr. Hans Holzer before his passing, and I became friends with his daughter Alexandra. Her first book and his last book came out on the same day, so we had both of them on the show. And Alex and I stayed friends, and then she had been shipping around her father's archives and all of his notes, trying to create a TV series, kind of like the Conjuring movies have done for Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Right.
They were trying to ship around a series regarding Holzer Files, treating it kind of like the X-Files, where it's actors portraying the roles of these characters and fictionalizing the original stories.
Right.
And it just kept getting kind of rebuked and rebutted and pushed back. And then as a kind of a last-ditch effort, Painless Productions said, what if we did this as a paranormal-themed reality show? and they reached out to me. And as I said in the past, when they first reached out, I turned them down. I had no interest in doing a paranormal show. I didn't want to just be another cookie cutter show. They were like, well, this isn't going to be the same. I'm like, well, what's different? And at the time, they couldn't tell me. They just wanted me to agree and sign on sight unseen.
Right.
And I'm like, no, no. So I signed this thick non-disclosure, and then they came back and said, we're going to reopen Dr. Hans Holzer's case files. And that was the end of the statement. And I said, I'm in. What do I have to do? And Cindy was the first signed. I was the second one. Well, I should say, of course, Alexander was the first signed, but Cindy and I were the first two signed from the working team out in the field. And then along came Shane Pittman and Gabe Roth, the researcher. And we just had a chance to really kind of dig deep and reopen these files. And there were the original recordings, original camera photos, original video, everything that we could possibly want. Plus, this guy kept copious notes. So there were notes, and files galore. And he wrote over 145 books, so he was very good at keeping notes so that he knew what to write about in his books. And you know, I was just pleased to get a chance to do it. I think had they named it a little better, I think had they named it Holzer's Ghost Files, we would still be on the air. I think there was enough of a break between Holzer's death, you know, nearly 15 years before the show started, and not really enough tribute to him out there. You know, people knew the Warrens because of the Conjuring movies, but even to a mass part of the audience, the Warrens had kind of slipped into obscurity as well. I know Lorraine appeared on the TV show Paranormal State for a while, and you know, they weren't completely forgotten at time, but Dr. Holzer had been dead for 15 years, so there wasn't much going the way of keeping him out there. A lot of us old timers that, you know, enjoyed reading his books remembered him. And we were hoping to reintroduce him to a whole new generation, which we did. It just didn't catch on as quickly as we hoped. But people that have found us love us and love the show and love the angle and the respect. And we had big shoes to fill and a long shadow to stand in. And we did our best to entertain, educate, and enlighten people for that 2 seasons. We did a total of 23 episodes, 10 in the first season, 13 in the second season.
That's pretty wild. I wouldn't be surprised if a year from now you just get the call to come back, because a lot of people are going to be finding this stuff. Like, I just got Discovery Plus, and that's when I discovered it. You know,
right.
So I wouldn't be just because of the way it's laid out. Like you said, you guys, it was a show ready to go essentially.
Yeah.
All you guys had to do was show up where Hans had already been, and even better, some of the places he never got to go to. Like,
right.
Like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about that. To walk onto a show like that is incredible.
Yeah, and we had enough case files that they said we could have gone without repeating or revisiting a story probably 10 seasons.
Yeah.
And then if you add in, and that's if we just hit his case files, then if you add in case files that he started but never got a chance to go out and visit, and we did a couple of those each season, we probably could have gone about 15 seasons without repeating. You know, he had thousands of case files, and he was a interesting guy and had a knack and a piece about him that no matter how weird things got, he was very calm. There were only a few times through the work that we did in research where we found that he was really kind of off-put or unnerved by the situation, but it was very rare. And if you listen to those original recordings when he's got Ethel Meyer or Sybil Leek in the chair doing the channeling, it was terrifying. Sometimes the voice is coming out of them, but he always remained calm and in control of the situation.
Yeah.
And his voice never really got over this unless they started getting abusive or weird. Then he would speak up, but it was always, Stephen, you're dead. This is no longer your realm, and it's time for you to move on. And I do a horrible accent for Dr. Holzer, but that was it. He was always said this just kind of. So we tried our best to walk in that vein of sincerity, and you know, obviously we were a little bit more jumpy going into some of these cases because you get into this false sense of security. You're in these beautiful old homes, and it just feels like, oh, this is not haunted, and then something happens, and it shakes you to your core.
Oh, totally. And some of the poor Shane, a lot of those times too. You'd had your encounters as well, but with Shane, I had a funny thought. It came to me earlier. I pictured an episode where you guys show up at this farm that's near an old mine, and you're breaking up to go into different areas solo, and for some reason the homeowner's still there. He's there with you during the investigation, and you go, so what would you call the scariest spot in the building? Well, that's kind of outside and underneath the house, about 6 levels down in the old mine. We call that the Devil's Pit. And you're like, okay, so Shane, why don't you grab the millimeter and head down to the Devil's Pit?
Well, here, Stephen, now something I'll make a mention to, because I do take a lot of flack. A lot of people thought I was kind of a dick and a bully, always making Shane go to those locations. Well, first of all, and this is no put down on Shane. We've joked around about it, but he's shorter than I am. He's skinnier than I am, and he's 14 years younger than I am. So he can slither into places a lot better than I can.
Mhm.
And a lot of those old homes have very low ceilings in the attic, very low basements. So I could go down there, but it would be this awkward hunchback look, whereas Shane could walk pretty much unimpeded in these
Yeah.
locations.
Yeah.
And
But,
we all spent time in those locations. They just showed, when we film there for 5 days. We film anywhere from 12 to 16 hours a day in a location. And the ghost hunts were long. We were in there 6, 8, 9 hours sometimes doing, everything from seances to tests to automatic writing. So we would each spend time in each one of the rooms by ourselves, but we only show the bits when something happened. And it would usually be when Shane was in that room. And people always forget, I got knocked down a couple times. I got bit in the arm once. I had some weird stuff take place, but everybody's always worked up that I always send Shane to the bad places, but I'm the one that bled, sweated, and was bitten for the cause. So
well,
I'll
it's
just let
also
that go on my
if you
legacy.
look at it, flip the script and you look at it from, because I do my own videos and stuff. I do ghost hunts. It's been a long time, but if I was going to film something and I'm the producer, I'd be like, okay, well, so far it looks to me like the best results seem to come from Shane. His reactions to what's going on, pop him down there. It's just because he always tends to get a response as well. And nobody
Right.
wants to be bored watching these shows. A lot of these shows are really boring to watch. This
Well,
one isn't.
he brings an energy, a nervous energy.
Mhm.
And I know we joked around about it when the show started. He was, he's like, I don't want to be looked at as some kind of wussy. I don't want to, I don't want people to think I'm just a chicken and that's all I'm about. And he goes, you guys all seem so stoic. And I said, listen though, your job is the most important to me. You've got Alexandra, who's the voice of her father. You've got Gabe, who's the dirty hands researcher who has to go through these files upon files and listening to recordings and finding cases that are still open to us. Then you've got Cindy, who's the voice of the other side. She's the spirit realm. And then there's me, who's kind of taken over as the interviewer and the Hans Holzer figure. Shane, you're the connection to the audience.
Yeah.
You're the audience who's sitting there going, oh, hell no, don't go under there. Don't go into there. They're relating to you. So we all have a part of this story that people can feel good about. But there were times it switched, and there were times that Cindy and Shane had to calm me down after something horrific happened to me. But what I liked is that in our investigations, both in that show and then Cindy and I carrying on in Ghost of Devil's Perch, we never felt that we had to be on a demon hunt. So we were never out seeking the demonic realm. And we were allowed to just be honest and say, hey, we think this is just a very upset or tortured soul spirit. Let's try to help it, as opposed to let's, chastise it and run away from it. What can we do to fix this? And that was important to all of us.
That's got to be well, you and Shane both had incidents where you're hearing a child's voice saying mommy or daddy. And I bawled my eyes out right along with you. So I've got 4 kids, and my daughter was being harassed by something from the time she was born until she was about 3 months old. I snapped, put my foot down, and threatened to come back and devour their souls if they would leave it alone.
Right.
And I got to tell you, brother, nothing bothered me for 5 years. There was nothing for 5 years.
Well, and I'll tell you this, since you're relatively new to finding it, Stephen, and many of your viewers may now find the Holzer files and Ghosts of Devil's Perch. What I did after every episode was I did a live video stream. So it would air live on Travel Channel. Then I would sit down with either Shane or Cindy or Gabe or one of our directors or one of the experiencers, and we would revisit the episode and talk about things that didn't make it on the air. So if you go to YouTube and go to the Paranormal 60 YouTube channel, and if you click under videos, you should be able to scroll back and find a bunch of those old episodes where we go back in and talk about each episode. And we name them after the name of the episode, so they're easy enough to follow along with. That or underneath the live tab, you can go in and find them there as well. So there's a way to kind of check back in on those Holzer files and Ghost of Devil's Perch cases and get some more in-depth information and things that we missed the first time around. And there was evidence in season 2 that we totally missed that we talk about, and you see it in the film. Same with Ghost of Devil's Perch. We found a few things after the fact that we talked about on air. So that's kind of a cool way. So again, for you and your followers, go check out the Paranormal 60, which is the name of my podcast. It's also a video cast, and it's on YouTube. If you want to watch the video aspects of them, or you can just go to just about any of the podcast apps out there and listen to the audio. Yeah.
That's great. Actually, I did go to that site, and a lot of people, for those who don't know, Dave has that, the Paranormal 60 show. He has friends on there sometimes doing news. They cover all kinds of different things. He interviews a bunch of people. And like you said, I saw all those clips on there. I haven't gotten into them yet, but I'm going to now definitely check them out because I didn't know what they were at first.
Good.
Now that I know that those are specific to those cases, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and there was evidence. There was some of the stuff that we couldn't air because of time constraints. You got to remember, when you're filming 5 days, 14 to 16 hours a day, and you have to cut that into 42 minutes to air on TV, there's a lot that falls by the wayside. Some of it is really compelling evidence, but doesn't have anything to do with the story, because you have to remember, that place has so much history. We were hitting ghosts and other things from other timelines, but it wasn't the story we were trying to find. We have to sift, and poor Cindy had to sift through all of that psychic memory and energy and places and spirits to get to the core of the spirits that seem to be unsettled. And we caught some really great and weird stuff that didn't make the regular episode, but you can go revisit it on the after shows.
That was actually the main reason I chose. Like, Cindy's great, and I'm usually a skeptic. Like, I believe it's possible. There are people out there. Everybody is psychic to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
That I totally believe. So of course there are going to be people who've learned to tune in, but there's some that are very questionable. But the main reason I played that clip at the beginning even was because that was a situation where you thought you already knew the story, and then she found out more about the servant girl. Everybody thought it was the daughter of the main stars of the movie, if you will. But meanwhile, it was one of the supporting actresses' daughter that had gotten taken away. And nobody had a way of knowing that. And she came up with it. So it was but still the skeptic wants to, every episode you're trying to, okay, where's she going to screw up? But she doesn't screw up. That's what I love about it too. She's got a class for those interested. She does courses and classes. I'm going to look into myself.
And I tell people, even if you're not a medium, but you're interested in the paranormal, you should take some of her classes, just because it gives you an insight into what she does, how spirits choose to communicate. And even though you may not want to open yourself up, learning hows and whys and what's working behind the machine, you know how to drive a car. You learned how to drive a car, but it'd be great to be able to pop the hood and look underneath it and understand why the car runs. That's what's good about taking classes. I'm soon going to be offering up paranormal ghost hunting classes online as well, so people can pop in, hear some of my insights, ideas, thoughts, concepts, how we deal with these different aspects of the paranormal and what we can do to try to bridge that gap, bring the other side a little closer or understand it better.
Right. Well, and it's also great for something like that so that people know not to just go in there with a Ouija board, open up a portal to hell, and then walk away. Like,
Right.
and
Exactly.
how to keep things, hitchhikers from following you back when you leave and stuff like that. Like,
Mhm.
there's a lot, and for Cindy, even how to protect yourself before you
Mhm.
walk into a place and to open yourself up like that.
Right.
There's like, even just right now, my ears are ringing, my head is spinning, headaches starting. I was talking to a woman who's a medium friend of mine last night. We just connected. We hadn't talked for a while. And while I was talking to her, I heard a voice in my head. So obviously she didn't hear it, but she said, "You heard a voice, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then a second later, I turned my head and she goes, "I heard that before I even said anything." There was a growl like a foot away from my ear. So it's really, and I was just watching one of those episodes just like half hour ago now with the growling and stuff. It sounded just like that. And she told me she heard it before I opened my mouth. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that.
Yeah, it's crazy how close we are to the spiritual all the time.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's are you willing to listen? Are you willing to do that? People always want signs, but then they're overlooking what the signs are because, well, to me, a sign means this, a lightning bolt from the heavens, but
Mhm.
they're overlooking something directly in front of them. And it's funny how that happens. And then there are other people who I feel, oh my God, there's a penny on the floor. That's my grandfather. Okay, maybe. Why?
It is.
Well, I always find pennies on the floor. So do I. So is that your grandmother kicking or grandfather kicking me a penny too? What about it makes it so important? Like, to me, when I find wheat pennies out of the blue, my grandfather collected wheat pennies. I used to help him collect wheat pennies. I walk in a room, there's a wheat penny in the middle of the floor. I have no clue why or where it came from. Is it truly a sign? Whatever it is, I take that moment to think about my grandfather and have that little moment. So factor
It's a
theory,
gift.
there are a lot of theories regarding this. Fact is, it stopped me in my tracks and it allowed me to relive some memories and good things. So it may not necessarily always be paranormal as we think it, but it is a great reminder. And that's, signs are interesting, how we interpret them.
It really is like, perspective is everything. And
Exactly.
I just pictured a meme with you saying, "I'm not saying it's ghosts, but it's ghosts."
But it's ghost,
I
right?
think it is.
Giorgio
If you
Tsoukalos without the hair.
right, but either way, it's a gift, right? Because like you
Mhm.
said, you got to sit there and think about him again, and just
Well, I look at all of this as a gift. I mean, I have people that tell me, man, when you got knocked down, that would have been the end for me. I'm like, no, that was a gift
Mhm.
because the spirit saw somebody that could sense them, hear them, knows that they're there, and they lashed out. And it was like, does that mean that because my kid kicked and screamed and caught me by accident, he's a demon? No, he's hurting. He's upset. He wants
Right.
to be heard. So that's when you turn around, you take a deep breath, and you say, what's wrong? What can I do for you?
Mhm.
And that's when we started getting some of the clearest responses, and it energetically just tells you what you're dealing with. And it's just fascinating to me. And I love that aspect of it. And I think that's what Dr. Holzer embraced so much about this work is he really believed he was helping the other side, the spirit realm and the humans heal. And, I always said when we went into these homes, it was really never for the fleshies. It was never for the living.
Right.
It was to help the dead or the spirits. Maybe dead is an improper term because obviously they're not dead. There's a life force. What can we do to fix it? And by fixing it, then the fleshies are better off.
Absolutely. Yeah. One way, no matter how you look at it, we'd be better off. Wild. I
Exactly.
think what I haven't seen yet. Well, there's one show that addresses it a little bit. Kindred Spirits, about actually crossing the children over. I would love to see a show that specifically goes around all these places that we know are haunted and we know have children there, and specifically helps to cross them, and animals even.
I'll tell you what, Stephen, you did watch a show that did that. The Holzer Files and Ghost of Devil's Perch. The problem is networks are very reluctant to show a lot of that because it seems like you're going to offend somebody with religion, with your religious perspective and take. So I was thankful that they let me do prayers. I did prayers everywhere I go. Shane and I would often do them. Sometimes Shane, Cindy, and I. But I would, at the end of every location, I would stand there, Stephen, and I would say, Lord, I just ask that you come into this home or into this building. And I ask that you baptize each room in the blood of Jesus Christ. Help every soul that is lost or forgotten. And Lord, I just ask that you help aid them to the light. Open the light, bring forth their friends, their lovers, their relatives, their pets, and help them find peace. And for those spirits that choose to stay here, Lord, I just ask that you bind them in a thorny hedge of protection to keep the living and others safe from their energy. And I pray this in your name. Amen. And I did that at every location we ever investigated.
That's
because
awesome.
I don't know. It's not like a Hollywood movie where I can turn then and see the skies open up and light beams as spirits
Right.
go up, but it can't hurt. So I do my best to
Exactly.
try to help those spirits out.
That's awesome. Because and it kind of pisses me off that they wouldn't show you doing that at least once.
Oh, they did. There were times
They did show you do that whole prayer. Okay, then maybe I must have walked
well,
out of
that
the grab a
sometimes
coffee.
they'll show us like doing the prayer while there's a voiceover.
Ah,
You saw us at the Morris Jumel Mansion. We brought the Santeria priests to help clear the house, and
right.
you saw that outside. And there were a few times you saw us do a prayer together, and especially in Ghost to Devil's Perch, there was a lot of prayers. We had a priest come in and bless the cabbage patch, and
Mm-hmm.
we had a team that deals with the demonic go into the Hennessy Mansion and do a ceiling prayer protection and clearing of the home. So, and then I did prayers at locations. We did them everywhere, and they do show them. It's just, again, a lot of people just tune it out. So it does happen, and there are shows that do that as well. But you'd be surprised if you go back and start watching and be like, oh my God, they did do a prayer. In like 23 episodes, they did prayers or something close to it in 12 of them or 8 of them. And I understand the production. They're like, all right, we've shown you do it a few times. People are going to just assume you do it all the time. I'm like, no, they're not. People are going to wonder, why don't you do it everywhere? Because
Yeah, like this
so
Tippy guy here.
no, but it's a good point, and it's a natural state. But I know that there are other teams that have done similar things. They just don't show it on TV, and that is because there are a lot of groups that take offense because, well, why'd you do that? The family that used to live there was Jewish. Why are you praying to Jesus? The family that was there was Buddhist, or the family that was there was Jehovah's Witness. Why are you praying in that fashion? And I'm like, hey, all I'm doing was what I can do.
Yep.
It does, Leonardo da Vinci can see a wall and paint it, and it's going to look different than how I paint that wall. Right. And it doesn't mean either one is wrong. It's just a different perspective on the same job.
Exactly.
And it's the intention and the manifestation of what we put into it that changes and alters those deals. So my goal is just to try to help. And I don't think you're going to get punished because the guy was Jewish and I did a Christian prayer. It's not like God's going, not going to help you here. Sorry.
Especially since most of us are worshiping the same God by a different name.
Right.
And
with children spirits, Stephen, don't always fall for the concept that you're dealing with a spirit of a child. Right. This lifetime, they may have passed away as a child. But remember, if you believe in reincarnation, as I do, there's a good chance that spirit's been around numerous times. And the spirit itself may be hundreds or thousands of years old. The visage, what you see is what is being projected of who they were when they passed. But with that said, we also have stories where grandma's ghost is haunting her childhood home, but not as an old woman, as a 7-year-old girl. How can that be when we know she died at the age of 89, 3 states away, and we see her old woman ghost? It must be evil, must be a doppelganger, or maybe it's a fractal. It's a piece of her soul that was left behind because she loved this home so much as a child. There's this piece of her still there, and she loved this home as an adult because she built it with her husband. Raised her family there. So there's always going to be a part of grandma in a couple of these places. And I don't think that hauntings should or are limited to one certain rule.
Exactly. Well, you'd be getting into residual haunts even. in that respect. There's just something, there was so much love or so much tragedy at a certain spot that that time slate is stamped permanently in the area.
But in some instances, it's a interactive spirit. Even though grandma's an old woman, she's here as a 7-year-old. I've joked about it for years. When I die, what you see in front of you, Stephen, this is not the ghost you will notice. It'll be brown hair, brown, sandy brown hair, 80s fluffy hair, and an earring and torn blue jeans and my Bruce Springsteen t-shirt. That's how I will elect to be seen if I'm given the chance. Not like this.
Exactly.
I don't want to look like Annie DeVito's penguin for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it seems like there seems to be a lot of people that want to put rules on things. And what I was thinking about actually was the one case I was watching literally before we started talking was about it's not so much about the case, but why do these spirits seem to be so consumed with their corpses after they're long dead? Like, say, when
maybe out of respect, because it's the fact that, if some of them are still confused and dazed by their death and don't understand what happened and where's my body, or the fact that, some of these people were murdered and their bodies were buried in some hellhole. And what they're saying is, where's my body, is more not like, hey, where the hell did my body go? But why aren't you concerned with where I am? Why aren't you seeking that physical form? Let's put it to rest in a hallowed ground. If their belief was so strong that they needed to be buried in hallowed ground to go to heaven, they may be terrified to cross over. Because they're not in a churchyard, they're in somebody's cornfield. So maybe their soul or spirit stays here saying, where's my body? Find my body, so that they can be put to rest, not realizing it's the soul that matters, not the physical meat bag we wear.
Right. They're stuck in their past belief system, and that's keeping from finding their way across. Yeah, that's a good point.
I knew I'd come up with one of them.
And you came up with it quick too, some bonus points. Okay, this is the one. I've got to keep my light off for now. It's legal to grow your own pot here in Canada, and I grow medicinal. I have back issues, serious ones, so I do it for that. But the light doesn't come on for another half hour, so that's why I'm sitting here in blue light. But unfortunately, now I can't read what I wrote.
Oh, really? Okay.
Give me 1 second here. Okay, yeah, animal spirits. Have you, because I haven't seen anything on camera, have you come across any, or have you in general on your own? Yeah.
There's a lot of animal spirit stuff that we've seen and heard, and there's cat videos I've seen, there's dog videos. My dog passed away, and my parents had taken over my dog's care while I was gone, and they just absolutely fell in love with her. And when she passed, they were heartbroken. And that night, as they're laying in bed, they were so used to the dog being there, all of a sudden they felt the bed bump and jump, and then something laid down between them, and they could feel the panting on the bed of the dog. And the two of them were just stunned. But there are many different stories like that to take place of spirit animals, spirit things, animals. I guess that's just why wouldn't they have a soul? Animals are more loving, compassionate, and caring than humans are. Of course, that proves the soul to me exists, right?
Absolutely. Unconditional love too.
Well, I have 4 cats. There's some conditions involved. I'll go on record as saying that. My dog, not so much. My dog, you could scream at him 1 minute for pooping on the carpet and be mad at him, and the next minute he's like, "Hey, you want to cuddle?"
Okay,
my
I've
cat,
got
my
one of
cat
those
snub
too.
me and walk away. So
I've got one of those too. Tries to trip me every single time I stand up, and she's pure black. And as you can see, it's dark in here most times. So I'll stand up. She jumps in front of me, comes to a dead stop. With my back issues, it's L4 and 5, I think, or whatever, and my hips are all messed up. So a sudden stop is very painful. And she seems to take great joy every time I let out a yelp of pain. I keep telling people my cat wants to be dead.
Typical animals, yeah.
Oh, geez. Okay, so let's go to Devil's Gulch for a minute. What was the gentleman's name?
Devil's Perch. Devil's Perch. Come on, man. Ghosts of Devils
Because I was
Perch.
trying to
Yeah.
think of the other guy's name now because I had it written down, but like I said, I can't see it at the moment. That was you and Cindy again, and who was the third member that time?
And K.D. Stafford.
K.D. Stafford, that's it.
Mhm.
Him with his ghost box, that was tripping me out.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys use that like just all the time?
Well, we did, but sometimes you don't get anything. We used a lot of tools, but when you're standing around for 2 hours and nothing's going, you move on to another tool, and then you show the clip when we did get something.
Perfectly reasonable. See, you're teaching this dippy kid some stuff here. I'm sure there's some other people that have let that stuff fly by the wayside as well. Now, how did you get that show, Ghosts of? Now that's a series, right? There were other
Right.
exclusive-
Season 1 and 2 were Ghosts of Shepherdstown with Nick Groff, Elizabeth Saint, and there were a few other team members, and I apologize, I can't remember the names off the top of my head. Season 3 was Ghosts of Morgan City, where they went to New Orleans, and Louisiana, rather, I should say, Morgan City, Louisiana. They had Jeremy Leonard, the Cajun demonologist. K.D. Stafford appeared, I think, on 3 or 4 episodes. Ben Hansen, Sarah Lemos, and then COVID hit, and everybody kind of went their separate ways for 2 years. And by the time they were ready to do a new season, they had just canceled the Holzer files. Ben and Sarah were on to different projects. Sarah was filming Ghost Town Terror. Ben was off on UFO Witness, so they just took Cindy and I and popped us over because we made a good team and put us over onto this new series, and that's where it went from there.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get over it. Like I know it seems like I don't know what to say, and I kind of don't because I'm still in shock that there's not a season 3. I'm sitting here trying. What am I supposed to watch now? Because Devils Gulch is done now.
Well,
and they got
Devil's Perch. Come on, Steven, help me out. The Ghosts of Devil's
There's another
Perch.
one I watched 2 days ago that's got a gulch in it, and I keep confusing the titles. My Lord. But yeah.
No worries. Well, there's, I was in 2 shock docs. One shock doc was called The Curse of Lizzie Borden, and I went there with Chris Fleming and Sam Beltrusis. Sam is an actual relative of Lizzie Borden's, and we went in with Lou Ann Jolly, an EVP specialist, and did an investigation, try to get some answers on that case. I was also in another documentary shock doc called The Demon in the White House.
Okay.
I've appeared on 7 or 8 episodes of Ghost Adventures. I've been on, there are 2 live specials. I was on the Salem Live Halloween special. I was on Ghost or Haunted Hospitals. I was in season 2 of Paranormal State on their UFO episode called First Contact. I was on a mini series called Paranormal Challenge. So you can find a lot of these out there. So there's still plenty of Dave to go around. Steve,
I'm sure most of it's on Tubi as well. For a lot of people don't know, Tubi TV is a free stage. If you're tight on the belt like I am these days, go to Tubi, and most of the things Dave's talking about, at least probably half, are going to be up on there as well, if not on Discovery Plus. Pretty sure.
And Travel Channel. They still air it on Travel Channel too. A lot of
and Travel as well. Okay, fantastic. And actually, they air it here in Canada on Detour Channel for people.
That's right, Detour, right?
Canada.
And the Really channel over in England.
Which channel over there?
Really, Really. Yeah, Really.
That's freaking cool. I did not know that.
Yeah.
What was it, or when was it that you decided, like what age and what was the catalyst to get you saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to try this and see if this works as the paranormal?
Well, I've grown up with it all around me my whole life. So I've always had weird stuff going on, and from aliens to UFOs to ghosts to psychic resonance and connections to a Bigfoot sighting when I was a kid. So there's been a lot of different things that have taken place. So I haven't hunted it. I think the paranormal's been hunting me most of my life. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I went to college to do radio, fell in love with radio there, and then just, took a break from it from 1990, 91. I think I went out of radio because I did college for a couple of years, and then started up again in January 1st, 2006 with my first paranormal radio show. And now I host the Paranormal 60, which I've been doing for a year, but I've been continuously on the air for 17 years now and talking about all aspects of the strange and the supernatural. And the new show is called the Paranormal 60. So, people can listen on most podcast apps, or again, go check out the Paranormal 60 YouTube channel for more video and insights and fun that we do there.
Yeah, that would be the quickest and easiest way. It's trippy that you had a big. My childhood was similar. Ghosts from being 3 years old and not realize they seemed solid to me, but finding out later, no, that was your dead grandmother or something like that. And Bigfoot when I was 11 here in Ontario, in Lake Ontario, I saw this thing, and UFOs. Never anything up close that you could go open the door and I'll come with you, always up in the sky. But yeah, my whole life too. So I don't really think I've had much of a choice, but that's probably why I spent a lot of years in depression, because I was doing jobs I wasn't happy with when I should have been doing it the whole time. That's trippy. For UFOs, did you ever have anything that just totally blew your mind? Everybody's seen something in the sky.
Right.
Have you seen something trippier than that?
I was in, as a kid, I went to Y camp all the time, and there would always be 1 or 2 nights where they would have us just go lay under the stars. I think that was just a way for the camp counselors to get us quiet for a while so they could go off and make out before Jason Voorhees would come out, right? So, and there were times we saw things and lights flashing in the sky. I remember it clearly, but nothing so traumatic. And until 2006, it was around October of 2006, and I went to the Isetti Ranch in Trout Lake, Washington, and I saw UFOs flying over the sky. This huge blue glowing UFO. I still can't wrap my head around what I saw. He said it was a half biologic, half mechanical craft. That's how it got between dimensions. Sounds ridiculous, but I saw it myself. I have no explanation for what I saw or how it did what it did. And, I've seen things years later. I was at Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, and we were doing a big ghost hunt and I went outside to get some fresh air for a little bit. And as I was standing outside looking up, all of a sudden this ball of light comes streaking across the sky. And I'm like, what the hell is that? It wasn't a plane. And we all kind of looked up. There was about 8 or 9 of us. And then all of a sudden you hear this roar, just this, and a Black Hawk jet comes zooming across the sky, chasing this thing right over the top of Philadelphia. So it blew me away. I've been in the wrong place at the right time many times, and I'm pleased that I have. Yeah. So, but I think once you open yourself up, you start to become acutely aware of things being different and maybe a shift in energy or something. I don't know.
No, I think you're right. That's how you really do, for people who've never had, the people that are like skeptics, just flat out say no, or you're on the fence. It really is like that. You feel a change in the atmosphere. Things get dampened and quieter, and just all of a sudden, bam, next thing you know, you're Dave being tackled into Shane into a wall, and even Cindy said she didn't sense that coming from anywhere. It was just,
well, she kind of did. She said just moments before, this spirit is angry. It's going to take your knees out. It's going to take your knees out. And I'm like, oh, whatever. And I was kind of mocking in my mind, thinking, this is ridiculous. It's going to take your knees out. And mind you, that was the first time we ever worked together as a team, was a Whaley House.
Oh, and okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was highly skeptical of Cindy at that point. I knew her. I knew of her. She was a sweet girl. But I hadn't really seen her work complete yet. And she was weirding us out from day one when we did the walkthrough. And she's like, oh, this thing doesn't like technology. It's going to shut down your cameras. And we have independent cameras. And I'm looking at the computer bank of, the way station where all the video cameras are coming in, and all of a sudden they start shutting down. We had a light bulb explode over our heads. We had crazy stuff take place. So you start to take her seriously. But when she's making comments, oh, it's going to sweep your knee, I'm like, whatever. All right, you know, Ralph Macchio, sweep the knee, right? And
Yeah.
I just was kind of scoffing about it, and all of a sudden something just hit, it felt like I got hit by a linebacker, and it drilled me up and into Shane, and then I hit the ground. So that was one of the few times I do feel bad for Shane, because you get 285 pounds of pure blubber slapping into you. It's not a pleasant experience.
It looked like he managed to get himself just enough out of the way to not be
Yeah,
in
barely.
too
Yeah.
much pain. It looked like you got the worst
And
of
when
it.
you talk to Shane, he says, first thought in my mind was, holy crap, did this old man just have a heart attack and die? 'Cause he didn't know me that well. But I just hit him and hit the floor, and they thought I'd passed out or had a heart attack or something.
But that's another reason you also got to, because we're in our 50s now, like
Yeah, but the
we
50s, the 50s now are what they say are the 30s. So I don't know
I
about
know
that. I
somebody
don't
who died
remember
of
my
my
heart
age back
hurting
in
like
his
that.
30s.
Yeah, that too. Exactly.
Actually, I was talking with Robert Morningstar last week. I'm not sure if you're aware of him that, but he knew
Sure. Yep.
once, and he was telling us about a story that he was visited by something, and it was freaking him out so badly that he felt like his heart was really going. He thought he was dying, and he was like, "Oh my God, this is it. This is how people die in the middle of the night. Some freaking ghost shows up, and it scares them literally to death." And it
Yeah,
made me
exactly.
think. I wonder how much. I mean, there's no way to find out, but it just got me thinking how many people have died that way. It was a freaking ghost killed them, Wow.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'd hope none, but who knows? There's one official story online somewhere, and I can't remember the history of it right now, but there's one official story that they actually attribute a death to a ghost, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to look that up.
And then there's a couple of stories like the famous Red Barn ghost and the Greenbrier ghost, Greenbrier, North Carolina, I believe, where that one is actually attributed with solving its own murder.
Oh,
and and the ghost came to, I want to say, the mother-in-law or her mother, and told her mother what had happened to her, and it became admissible in court, and they were right. She was,
wow.
the mother-in-law or the mother proved it. And so there's a sign in Greenbrier, and it says, this is the town of Greenbrier, where the Greenbrier ghost, is the only official case in history where a ghost's um
Testimony.
testimony was officially allowed in court. So pretty cool.
That
Weird loving history. That's what I think is great about this stuff.
that is wild. Yeah, that give me goosebumps. Go ghost. Holy crap. Yeah, there's got to be something to it. Like, and if you think about it, they don't. The paranormal, like a lot of people will say, don't talk about that stuff. There's no such thing as ghosts. At least that's what it was when we were younger. Definitely, a lot of
Right.
people were like, you don't talk about that stuff. It's part of the reason I was going through depression. I'm hearing and seeing things that people are saying, no, you're not. Or my dad's beat. My grandfather had died.
Mhm.
I woke up. I was wide awake. I seen him at the foot of my bed, crying. He looked fully formed, but I couldn't. There was no audio. Picture
Right.
without audio, but he looked solid, and he was reaching towards me. I went to reach for him. Phone rang. This is when back in the days when you had one phone in the house, and it was downstairs hanging on the kitchen wall. So my father instantly jumps up, gets it on the second ring, and we find out that my grandfather just died about a half hour earlier in a car accident, drove off a bridge in Manitoulin Island.
Wow.
He was in the back seat, and it was the days where you didn't have the back doors. It was the seat, the whole seat would move forward, and
Right.
they were all drunk. The two people in front got out. He didn't. But the long story short of it was when he was crying when he got off the phone. I think I was like 7 or something, and I was like, "Grandpa was just upstairs," and he gave me a backhand. He didn't understand what was going on. I didn't understand, but that tripped me out. So that was about the time I stopped saying I just saw a ghost.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame that some people get closed down from that, and they're told it doesn't exist. And I understand, I've fought lifelong depression and anxiety as well. Maybe that's what draws us to the paranormal, is that it's someplace where we feel normal and we're
Yeah.
able to, go outside ourselves for that little bit of time. So, um, it is a shame when people cast aspersions on those that see and witness and have experiences. But on the other side, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely true.
Gives us keener insight. And maybe that's why I'm able to accept being hit by a ghost. I was bullied my whole life from the fleshies. I understand empathetically why spirits lash out and why they're hurt. And I want to do what I can to help bring them peace and give their story a chance to be heard, because I hated being silenced as a kid and being so afraid of my own shadow because I got my ass kicked on a regular basis and was so afraid to fight back because I was afraid my dad would be pissed off at me. Not that he was abusive, but I had a healthy fear and respect of my dad, and his concept was, if you get in a fight, you get held after school, I have to come get you, and that's disservice to me. I'm busy. So you better not get in trouble at school. So I would just take an ass kicking. And eventually my dad found out what I was going through. And he goes, kick the shit out of those kids. Don't let them beat you up. And, but for many years I was a whipping post for a lot of people. So, I think maybe, again, that's what gives me a lot of the empathy towards the spirit realm.
Mm-hmm. And something like parapsychology, I'm a psychologist, you pretty much should be into it and open to it, at least empathic a little bit if you're going to go ghost hunting at all, because otherwise you are just going to cause trouble. Because like you said, like the things you're bringing up, I'm sure I would have realized. I've had like way too many concussions. I'm basically at this point a talking monkey. But so to try to go in there when you don't understand anything, just to get views on YouTube or likes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's stories about people who have done that, and now they're like fearing for their lives because there's ghosts that followed them home or whatever from these places. So
sure, and they messed with the wrong thing, and then there are people that have broken into these locations at night when they're not supposed to be there and fallen through floorboards and impaled themselves. Or that's not a ghost killing them; it's their own stupidity. I always tell people, don't there's ways to do things and there's ways not to. And sneaking into places, getting access. Listen, I mean, as kids, we all did silly stuff, but as you grow up, you should have better sense. And a lot of people have actually cost us famous haunted locations because they broke in, got hurt, and it was cheaper for me to burn that place to the ground or reduce it to rubble with a bulldozer than to allow it to stay up. Because insurance-wise, if you went in there, even though you broke in and did something stupid, I'm still held liable for it as the owner of that building. A lot of people just bulldozed, and that way there was nothing to fall through, nothing to get hurt on. And that was the end of the story for quite a few of these people and quite a few really cool locations. That was one problem we had with Holzer's files, because he was at this game for 60 years. There were a lot of the locations that didn't exist anymore. Also, a lot of locations that he could investigate back then that weren't having interference from internet and cell phones and wireless phones and things that would cause false positives. And he could go in and investigate an apartment building and go to one apartment to do an investigation with his medium to channel the answers that we couldn't do. We couldn't get access to an apartment building, so a lot of the places no longer exist. Some were burned to the ground, some were converted, some were torn down, some were now high-priced apartments. And then that's the other thing. A lot of the houses, when he was investigating, there were $35,000 houses in Cape Cod. And now they're $500,000 or $2 million homes that are owned by wealthy business magnates. So, we didn't have a lot of access to some of the cool places, but we did have a lot of access to a lot of places we could have gone. Yeah.
When it makes me wish that a lot more people would wake up to it, because I'm pretty sure there's probably somebody out there at some point has invented something like a ghost box that's way clearer. But people in charge, definitely, you think about that, there'd be a lot of rich people out there that don't want you knowing that, because then you'd have ghosts solving their own murders all the time. Oh yeah, so and so's doing this, Trump's doing that,
there's
doing that.
Yeah, there's some there are a few pieces of equipment that I've heard extreme clarity on. And But a lot of it's inadmissible in court. How do you prove? Then we have to prove an afterlife. We have to prove ghosts exist. We have to prove that this is how it was obtained, and burden of proof will never fall in that zone. So,
Oh, okay. Here's the bumpers. Are you able to stick around?
actually, I can't. I apologize. I've got family and functions tonight. And you said an hour, so that's what I told them I'd be able to be available.
That's great. Thanks a lot. This is Dave Schrader.
Thank you, Stephen.
Try to have him back in the future. You have a great night, buddy.
You too.
Thanks.